This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. There was significant drama in Ottawa today as Finance Minister Freeland resigned before releasing a fiscal update. We'll tell you more about that later in the show. But first, Manitoba released its own fiscal update today. Our deficit is on the rise. CBC's Bartley Kivas joins us live in our new studio. And Bartley, what did we learn today about Manitoba's finances?
Brittany, the deficit is up, $513 million up since budget day in April. Manitoba's budget called for a deficit of just under $800 million at the end of fiscal year 2024-25. The fiscal update released today projects that deficit will rise up to $1.3 billion. The main driver is healthcare spending. Health Minister Uzoma Asaguera is blaming it on bureaucracy.
You know, we need to see more scrubs being invested in and not suits at the top of these corporate ladders in the bureaucracy. Then we're seeing the benefits of that approach.
The province has asked for administrative cuts that amount to tens of millions of dollars, but healthcare spending is over budget by hundreds of millions. Meanwhile, Finance Minister Adrian Sala called $500 million in additional red ink good news because last year's deficit was even higher.
We've got more work to do. There's always more work to do and continuing to improve. But what we know is that this is a massive improvement over what we were left. And it shows that steady progress towards our balanced budget goal in that final mandate year.
So Bartley, what's been the reaction to it?
Well, the opposition PCs are not buying the idea that more red ink is good news.
You know, they're saying on one hand, their progress in shrinking the deficit, but at the same time, they've increased the deficit by over $500 million. This is not good news for Manitobans.
Lauren Stone also warned the extra deficit, the larger deficit, is going to be happening just a little bit before U.S. tariffs may arrive, and that could pay further havoc with the economy here in Manitoba. Brittany.
All right, CBC's Bartley Kivas. Thanks, Bart. An 18-year-old man has been sentenced for second-degree murder in the fatal stabbing of a 14-year-old girl in downtown Winnipeg 1 year ago. The man, who was 17 at the time of the incident, was sentenced as a youth. He pleaded guilty back in September. CBC's Josh Crabb has more.
In a victim impact statement, a brother of the 14-year-old girl told court his sister was a beautiful soul who didn't deserve what happened to her. He played a song on his phone in court he wrote for her called For You. Court heard his sister was stabbed repeatedly outside the Tim Hortons on Graham Avenue on the afternoon of December 15th. Her attacker, who was a week shy of his 18th birthday at the time of the offense, was sentenced today as a youth for second-degree murder. He was given 3 years in custody and an additional 4 years of conditional community supervision. The max sentence for a youth is 7 years, but only 4 of those years can be in custody. Court heard the two teens were with 2 other friends at the downtown coffee shop when they got into an argument. It continued on the street. The then teen was holding a cup of coffee and a Slurpee and put both items down before pulling a 10-inch kitchen knife from his waist. He stabbed the girl several times and then ran from the scene. She died in hospital. He was arrested days later. The offense was captured on multiple surveillance cameras, and the video was played in court. Court heard the boy told police he thought the girl had a gun. Court heard he was also worried about the safety of his girlfriend, who was one of the 2 other teens in the group. The victim did not have any weapons on her. Court heard the now 18-year-old lives with several mental health conditions and FASD. He will be required to undergo extensive rehabilitative treatment as part of his sentence. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
An update now to a story we brought you last week. A Manitoba woman was left for days, languishing in a hospital bed with a painful open wound in her right leg. On Friday, her leg was amputated above the knee. 61-year-old Roseanne Milburn spent days waiting for her wound to be closed after she developed an infection after a knee replacement surgery. That led to another infection, then amputation. Milburn doesn't know how much longer she'll be in hospital. She needs weeks of rehabilitation to learn how to walk. She longs for her independence.
I'm not used to anyone doing anything for me. I'm the matriarch of the family. I take care of the family. And now it's really hard to have them take care of me. It's hard to accept because I'm the one that's supposed to be taking care of them.
Milburn hopes to move to a hospital closer to home in Ely. She knows she won't be home for Christmas. Canada Post workers have been ordered to end their strike and be back on the job tomorrow. 55,000 members of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers have been on the picket lines for about a month. On Sunday, the Canada Industrial Relations Board ordered an end to the work stoppage. The board has ruled the two sides are at an impasse and unlikely to reach a deal before the end of the year. Business groups and consumers had been calling for government intervention. The strike has interfered with holiday shopping and deliveries. The impact of the Canada Post strike in Manitoba might depend on where you live and what you do. To some, it means they're without essential services, while others didn't notice the strike at all. The CBC's Zubina Ahmed reports.
Narissa Manzano owns The Locals, a business that gives Manitoba entrepreneurs a bigger platform to sell their products at a storefront in the outlet mall. Manzano is in the thick of the postal strike.
We did have to cover a lot of the expenses, like for example, like our online store is set up with Canada Post, so the rates are not really the same with other carriers. So if there was like a price difference, we kind of just covered it just to keep everyone happy.
Manzano welcomes the news that Canada Post workers will be back on the job Tuesday, a relief to Vicky Phillips too. She's a registered nurse and counsellor in Lynn Lake in northwestern Manitoba. She wants people to recognize Canada Post as an essential service for the North.
I think about, like I said, anything to do with running a hospital, the blood supplies, getting samples back and forth, everything that we have in our community, we rely on Canada Post for.
She says people in her community have no delivery choices.
So there's a lot of things that are causing a lot of anxiety for people in that regards. Not one person in our community has said anything about, oh no, I'm not going to get my presents for Christmas. That's for sure.
While some people in rural areas had to go without the basics, for many people living in cities, the postal strike didn't make a difference.
I don't know that I noticed all that much, that other than the Christmas cards, that the post was not functioning, other than everything that I order usually comes by UPS or FedEx.
No, I don't have a lot of thoughts of them going back to work because there's not really a lot that I get from Canada Post.
In an email, Canada Post says it will ramp up service, but expect delays into the new year. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The strike lasted more than 4 weeks, and it meant that holiday markets became even more important for many small business owners. Sheila Lee and her husband print their art and sell it on things like clothing items and tote bags. Lee says they rely heavily on Canada Post because using other couriers is too expensive. A market yesterday at the Centennial Concert Hall gave them a chance to make their holiday sales.
It's very important to be here because now we can showcase all our products, and this is our only chance to sell to them.
Canada Post workers will be back on the job tomorrow. Let's bring in weather specialist Riley Laychuk now. And Riley, for those postal workers that are going to be back on the job, it sure is going to be messy. We've been contending with nicer, warmer temperatures, but it meant that fluffy snow and those roads. My goodness, we can't have it both ways, can we?
Exactly, I know. And, you know, the snow that we did see falling throughout the morning hours into the afternoon today across the Red River Valley was that heavy, wet stuff, not that fluffy, light snow that we saw in other parts of the province, especially into last week as well. Temperatures as we head into the evening hours here, -7s through the Westman region, -7 in Winnipeg. As expected, our afternoon temperature around -6 this afternoon. -12 in the Pas, -16 in Thompson. And looking at satellite radar, you can see that we do have still quite a bit of cloud across much of the province, and some of that snow still falling into parts of northwestern Ontario. Radar even picking up a few stray flurries and some periods of light snow across southern Manitoba as we head into the evening hours here. So expect that to continue as we head into the evening hours tonight. Temperature holds around -11 inside the city. In some of the more open areas, maybe we get down to -12, -13, but inside the city, -11, probably a pretty safe number. Northwest winds do begin to lighten up through the night tonight. We'll start to get a bit of clearing going once we get into the morning hours tomorrow. Again, those northwesterly winds staying pretty light, although as we get into the afternoon, expect that we could see some of that picking up again, bit of a breeze to the afternoon, northwest 20 gusting to 40. -10 by the time we get to the afternoon hours. Looking at a general mix of sun and clouds tomorrow, Brittany. There's a little bit more snow on the horizon. A lot for some parts of the province, so I'll break it all down when I come back.
And these temperatures, they're not going to stick.
Nope.
Thank you, Riley. Still ahead, 2 Winnipeg high schools canceled classes Monday after receiving threats. More on that when we return after this short break. Students and staff at a Charleswood school could expect to see officers on site tomorrow. The school division says there'll be a police presence at Oak Park High School. It comes after both Oak Park and a second high school received separate threats Sunday night. CBC's Alana Cole has more.
Threats sent by email left 2 Winnipeg high schools closed as police investigate. Now, Oak Park High School is one of the schools that received a threat last night. You can see police were at the school this morning. A statement from the Pembina Trail School Division says that after officers searched, police say the school is safe. The division says police will be at Oak Park tomorrow when the school returns to regular classes. The other school impacted today, Elmwood High School in the Winnipeg School Division. Superintendent Matt Henderson says they also received a threat last night. He wouldn't provide exact details, but did say the school and the daycare located there were closed to make sure everyone is safe.
We take it really, really seriously, and I hope that people know the gravity of when these threats are made. It really upsets people's lives. I mean, we have a daycare here at Elmwood, and so lots of folks are trying to make alternative arrangements as well. And we're in the business of teaching and learning, and now there's a day without teaching and learning.
Henderson says these kinds of threats are rare. Police say Major Crimes is investigating. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg School Division says Elmwood is also safe and students will be back to class tomorrow. The 2-month GST break began on Saturday. The savings were a surprise for some, but some business owners had to scramble to accommodate the federal tax holiday. CBC's Gavin Axelrod has more.
58.79. Did you need a bag?
At this toy store in Winnipeg's Exchange District, the holiday shopping season is well underway. But with the federal government's GST break arriving Saturday, this store owner says it's not as festive as it could be.
It's another layer of yuck and stress on top of other layers of yuck and stress.
Kari England says she had to change about 400 individual tax codes in the lead up to Saturday. Some items that were put on hold also had to have their taxes manually changed. Same with returns, to make sure customers are getting the right amount of money back.
This was just something I didn't need at this time of year, and I'm also not going to need it on Valentine's Day when I get to change it back.
The tax break gives consumers a little relief on items including food, beverages, restaurant meals, children's clothing, and toys. Jigsaw puzzles, video games, and consoles and books are also covered, but some shoppers at the store weren't so swayed.
Business as usual and things that I couldn't get, I've got some catalogs so I can order it in.
Others didn't even know the tax break started.
I mean, it's 5%. It's nice, but nothing to get too excited about.
But at PNP Games on Portage Avenue, the start of the GST holiday gave employees there something to celebrate. The store manager says business was booming.
Similar amounts to Black Friday or other major retail sales days.
Ev Legree also says he's hopeful that momentum can be sustained, even if the high volume of customers is a bit overwhelming.
I think people were waiting for the tax break. It was kind of up in the air as to whether or not it would even pass in the first place. And now that it's confirmed and now that it's here, people are doing at least part of their Christmas shopping.
The GST break will last until February 15th, giving people the chance to save a little bit here and there, even after the holiday season. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Canadians could see some relief when they fill their grocery carts this holiday season. After years of rising food costs, many prices have stabilized, and shoppers could also see a break on one big-ticket dish, the roast turkey. CBC's Paula Duhatchek explains.
CBC News used federal retail data to look at how much more it costs to make a turkey dinner after 5 years inflation. The bad news, since 2019, many common recipes have gotten more expensive. For example, baking a batch of sugar cookies will cost you 38% more than it did 5 years ago. Cooking mashed potatoes will cost you 31% more. And making a tray of dinner rolls from scratch, that'll be about 29% more. The good news is in the last year, the cost of many ingredients has started to stabilize. The median wage has also gone up about 24% since 2019.
We're seeing some slight relief from where we were a year ago, so things aren't getting worse. It's still more expensive to eat a holiday dinner than it was 4 or 5 years ago, but it's the pressure is coming off a little bit as compared to a year ago.
Shoppers could also get a break this year on what, for many people, is the most expensive item on their holiday dinner table, the turkey. Federal data shows that so far, turkey prices are trending down this year. Economists say that could be because there are more turkeys available, and they say demand might also be down as shoppers squeezed by the high cost of living avoid the meat case altogether. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
Riley's back now, and Riley, our viewers might notice that things look a little different here. We've had a bit of a revamp, well, a big revamp done in our studios over the past week. So we were out of it for a week, and we're back.
And it's nice to be in the same postal code.
It's very, very close to each other. It's nice now that the pandemic is over. We're back here. Big thanks to some people who have really been working around the clock for the last, particularly 10 days, but few weeks to get this going. Brad, thank you so much. Tammy, Andrew, Chris, and Angelo, who've been here away from their families for these past little while. We thank you guys so much. We're really excited to be broadcasting from here every night.
So nice. It smells so fresh in here.
So yeah, you'll notice some changes.
Yeah. Looks nice.
Good changes.
I
We like it. Changes in the weather coming in the next few days, too.
Changes in the weather, particularly, Brittany, we're looking at some snow in two parts of the province again, particularly in the west once again. Let's have a look at Futurecast, and I'll explain why. So the first area of low pressure, the one that we saw move through, bringing a little bit of snow overnight last night into the morning hours, that has now moved off into northwestern Ontario, impacting northwestern Ontario. Still a few little light flurries across southern Manitoba. Those will continue into the overnight hours. Otherwise, we're looking at mostly cloudy skies through the night tonight. We start to see some of that cloud breaking down a bit as we get into the morning tomorrow. So still, once again, in the morning, we're looking at predominantly cloudy skies to start the day, at least in the Red River Valley. We'll start to get a bit of clearing going as we get through the day. It really tries to become a mainly sunny day, but I think we settle at a mix of sun and clouds through the afternoon tomorrow and even back into northwestern Ontario, a cloudier day tomorrow. That's because behind that we do have some changing weather. So some brief clearing into Wednesday. As we get into Wednesday afternoon, though, you can look at our next weather maker here as we get into the afternoon hours. This is another area of low pressure out of Alberta. For the most part, the forecast model runs have been pushing this south of the border into northwestern Ontario. But as we get into Thursday, southwestern Manitoba, the Red River Valley get clipped by the northern edge of this. So, for example, Winnipeg, we're right on the edge of the snow. So more like 2 to 5 centimeters, but into southwestern Manitoba, Melita, Verdun, for example, could pick up another 10, maybe even 15 centimeters of snow. We'll keep an eye on that tomorrow as the system nears, but looking at some of the snowfall potential, this is one model run, keep in mind, as we get through into Thursday here. This particular model wants to give 10 to 20 through the southwestern corner of the province, and again, 2 to 5 centimeters through the Red River Valley. We have seen winds, particularly gusty today. Those do start to lighten up. Even through the overnight hours, could see the odd gusts up to 40 through the Red River Valley, but those really do start to lighten up as we get into the day tomorrow, and we'll start to see much calmer winds. Not to say there won't be a breezy moment here and there, but we're looking at much calmer conditions tomorrow. Waking up tomorrow, minus 14s, minus 15s into the west, into the minus 20s through northern Manitoba. Winnipeg, a good wake-up temperature around minus 11 tomorrow morning. Really not going anywhere. We're up to minus 10 through the afternoon hours. Then we start to see that cloud building into Wednesday again with some snow overnight into Thursday. Temperatures much below seasonal as we head into the weekend even, Brittany.
Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
We have much more ahead for you after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. In a stunning move, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has resigned from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet. The news comes on the day she was to deliver the government's fall economic statement. As CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian reports, it has fired up the opposition and rattled the Liberal government.
From a minister's departure Justin Trudeau knew about,
I've advised the Prime Minister earlier this fall that I will not be seeking re-election as a Member of Parliament for Central Nova during the next campaign.
to another that landed as a bombshell. Chrystia Freeland, instead of delivering a fall economic statement, publishing this letter, where she wrote, "On Friday, you told me you no longer want me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in cabinet. The only viable path is for me to resign." Also saying she and Trudeau have been at odds about the best path forward for Canada, calling out costly political gimmicks the country can ill afford as it faces U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tariff threat.
What the I mean, how does the Prime Minister, on the eve of a statement that we've been waiting for months, deep six his finance minister and think that things are going to be normal?
The reviews from some of Trudeau's own caucus no less scathing.
Let's put it this way. Firing a Minister of Finance who has served you extremely well is not what I would call a trustworthy move. And that's all.
Should you resign?
Yes.
I've been a great defender, but I just don't see how we move forward. I think he needs to go, yeah.
Calls echoed by the opposition.
Now is the time for a carbon tax election to turn the decision away from me or Mr. Trudeau.
I'm calling on Justin Trudeau to resign. He has to go.
While Trudeau hurriedly had veteran cabinet member Dominic LeBlanc sworn into finance.
Do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
As other ministers had this to say about Monday's events.
The moment now is for us to focus on the best interest of Canadians. That's what we're doing.
Chrystia Freeland is a good friend, someone I work with very, very closely. As president of the Treasury Board and Minister of Transport, this news has hit me really hard.
At least 6 Liberal MPs have publicly called on Trudeau to resign today as he meets with his caucus to discuss next steps. Rafi Boudjikanian on CBC News, Ottawa.
In a hasty appointment, veteran cabinet member Dominic LeBlanc has been sworn in as the new finance minister. He says he continues to support Prime Minister Trudeau. LeBlanc says focusing on the Canadian economy will be key, as well as dealing with cross-border issues involving the United States.
We need to also be extremely focused on the challenges that the incoming American administration will pose with respect to the potential imposition of tariffs. I have been doing a lot of work on border security issues over the last number of weeks. I saw 2 leaders focused on these issues at Mar-a-Lago when we were there 2.5 weeks ago. So I intend to continue to do the work that I have, and I think I have a pretty busy set of issues in front of me, and I'm excited about it.
The fall economic statement was tabled by Government House Leader Karina Gould after Freeland's surprise resignation. CBC's Ashley Burke has the details.
A media lockup unlike any other. Journalists showed up to view embargoed copies of the government's fall economic statement just as the finance minister set to deliver it stepped down.
From Finance Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, that she in fact is no longer going to be a finance minister and indeed is resigning from the cabinet.
Amid the bombshell news, the very document stayed shrouded under black sheets for almost 4 hours. It was unclear if it would be released at all until early afternoon. We finally got our hands on this document with about 2 hours rather than 6 to parse through nearly 300 pages of macroeconomic forecasts. And this document is one of the reasons for the split between Freeland and the Prime Minister. Freeland wrote, in the face of Donald Trump's tariff threats, it was important to keep Canada's fiscal powder dry and avoid costly political gimmicks. The budget includes $1.6 billion for a tax break on holiday essentials. In total, there's more than $24 billion in new spending over the next 6 years. And the government didn't stick to its own self-imposed target to keep the deficit down around $40 billion. It's close to $62 billion for the last fiscal year. This financial expert says it's due to one-time costs from COVID liabilities and Indigenous lawsuits.
We're still seeing a relatively high-spending government that is not necessarily keeping enough powder dry for what could happen between now and the next budget.
That uncertainty trumps administration. The government has a $1.3 billion plan to beef up security at Canada's border to respond. The economic projections include what might happen if Trump introduces some tariffs, but doesn't explore what a full-out trade war would look like. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canada's provincial and territorial leaders have been meeting, hosted by Ontario Premier Doug Ford. The gathering was called to develop responses to the threat of U.S. trade tariffs. But the resignation of the finance minister added a new element of uncertainty to the discussions. CBC's Olivia Stefanovic has the details.
Seizing the moment to send a message to the U.S. and the federal government.
This is a time for the premiers to step up, which we're going to.
Provincial and territorial leaders gathering together for the first time in person, amid political turbulence on both sides of the border.
And make no mistake about it, we may have our differences, but we're a united group of premiers.
When there's a threat of tariffs, we can't just sit back and roll over. We have to show that we have strength.
Northern premiers say they're on board to take aggressive countermeasures if the U.S. president-elect moves forward with plans to slap 25% tariffs on Canadian goods.
We need to do things like that to ensure that, we get the respect of Donald Trump. If we just roll over, how's he going to respect us?
The incoming Trump administration is threatening steep tariffs unless Canada stops the flow of illegal migrants and hard drugs like fentanyl across the border.
We need to be making those decisions, those investments, and come together collectively as a country on issues without having somebody do it in another country through a tweet.
The Premier of the Yukon says it shouldn't have taken a social media post by Donald Trump for the federal government to address the fentanyl crisis.
We have to give a little pause in the fact that we really need to commit to this now because it's been affecting so many of us across this country for years.
Our priority must be to settle the problem on the border. We still have some people coming at the airport and then moving illegally to United States.
Addressing those concerns hit a major snag today when Chrystia Freeland suddenly resigned from cabinet, a decision she says she made after the Prime Minister told her she would be moving from finance.
I think she had a difficult choice to make, and she made it.
On a day like today, I would hope that Canadians are reassured by looking at this table and seeing that the premiers are unified.
Premiers say they'll continue building on the work they've started here when they travel to Washington, D.C. to meet with members of the U.S. Congress in the new year. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Mississauga, Ontario.
2 people are dead after a shooting at a private Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin.
Around 10:57 a.m., our officers were responding to a call of an active shooter at the Abundant Life Christian School here in Madison. When officers arrived, they found multiple victims suffering from gunshot wounds.
Police say the suspected shooter was also found dead at the scene. At least 6 other people were injured, with children among those reportedly killed or wounded. Officials have only identified the shooter as a student at the school. An Ottawa man who was charged twice for checked bags on a recent flight is now speaking out. He paid Air Canada and then had to pay United. That's a violation of federal rules. Erica Johnson has this Go Public investigation into excess baggage fees and why customers keep getting overcharged.
Rob Eadson knew he'd need to bring a lot of stuff on a family trip to San Diego, traveling with his wife and young son.
It looks like we have bags included.
So he paid a higher fare to make sure all 3 Air Canada tickets included 1 bag per person. Their flights were what's called a code share, meaning one airline, in this case Air Canada, sells seats on a flight operated by another carrier, in this case United. But when they checked in, the United agent said Eidson had to ante up for all 3 bags again, even though he had proof he'd already paid.
He just told me that's an Air Canada receipt. It doesn't apply to United, and we would have to pay for bags.
Eidson filed a claim for compensation, but Air Canada refused to reimburse him.
For them to just say absolutely, stonewall you and say no is really disappointing.
It's also violating federal rules on baggage that say when passengers have a ticket to and from Canada that involves more than one airline, carriers must apply a single set of baggage rules.
It's a question of Air Canada dropping the ball in making sure United knows the conditions of the fare that the passenger was ticketed on for this United Airlines flight.
Air Canada could also be violating the Competition Act, says this UBC prof, selling tickets at one price, then customers get dinged with more fees.
If that information doesn't match their expectation, this constitutes potentially hidden pricing, false advertising, deceptive marketing. Those are all within the same vein.
Eidson says his family enjoyed their trip to San Diego, and after Go Public contacted Air Canada, he got an unexpected refund from United. Go Public has heard from other Air Canada passengers who were also overcharged for baggage. Air Canada says its policy is to abide by all regulations, and those charges were all in error. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Still ahead, doctors across the country say more younger, childless men are undergoing vasectomies. That story when we return after the break. Stay with us. In more than 30 years of practice, Dr. Errol Billenkoff rarely saw a man without kids come into his Winnipeg clinic to get a vasectomy. But since the pandemic began, he says it's become an almost daily occurrence. And he's not alone. Doctors say it's happening across the country. CBC's Corey Funk underwent the same procedure earlier this year, and it got him thinking. He and producer Victoria Potashnik took a look into why that's changed.
I'm a guy who's always wanted kids.
My son Callum was born 2 years ago, and then this August we had our daughter Signe.
And then I did what dads have done for decades when they're done having kids. I got a vasectomy.
Vasectomies aren't new. The first one was performed in 1899. But doctors CBC News talked to say there's an uptick in a particular demographic getting more of them recently. And according to experts, that increase in vasectomies could be indicative of a growing trend of younger people not wanting children. And here's what the doctor who performed my vasectomy had to say about that demographic.
So when I started in practice, it was very uncommon for any young person to come in and want a vasectomy when they had no children. And now it's become pretty much a daily occurrence.
Doctors across the country have said there are younger child-free men coming in for the procedure.
I think over the last few years, there's certainly been more younger men coming in.
We see more and more men and younger men without kids. They don't want kids. They've been sure of that for many years in many cases. And what changed is that before we were oddly seeing those, and now it's on a regular basis, every week.
An Ottawa doctor said until 2021, his clinic had a blanket policy to refuse men under 30 from getting vasectomies. But he reversed that policy when new research showed that young men without kids don't necessarily regret their decision. Now, he does them all the time. Billenkoff, who started to notice the uptick during COVID, says his colleagues around the world noticed the change too.
I am part of an international chat group where doctors who do vasectomies participate, and the topic came up, and it's like everybody noticed. It was just that obvious.
This Australian doctor, known as Dr. Snib, says it was unheard of for a young man without kids to come into one of his clinics 4 years ago when he started practicing.
Over the last 10 years, I've noticed a definite change in the demographic of patients coming in. A large group of childless men, ranging from 18 to 30.
Closer to home, Ian Clements knows something about that. He's a 35-year-old Winnipeg artist, furniture builder, and musician. He makes all kinds of things, but babies aren't one of them.
So when I was 30, I got a vasectomy for my birthday as a gift to myself to kind of just like prevent myself from doing anything I didn't want to do.
Although he says he's really happy with his decision, it's forced him to do some thinking about disclosing that he's had the procedure.
It's kind of a newer thing for me to tell people I have a vasectomy in the dating scene. I'm the kind of person I'd bring it up first date. Like, I'm never really someone who like holds things back for too long. So like if we're having a good conversation and things are very open, it's probably gonna slip out regardless.
At the time when he was deciding to get a vasectomy, he had a girlfriend who was having a hard time with birth control. It was the final tipping point for him, and he decided to undergo the procedure.
A lot of my female friends are like extremely stoked that I've done this.
A Yale sociology professor who teaches gender in medicine says Clement's attitude is more common among younger generations.
Demographers have definitively identified younger generations as being more egalitarian, more gender egalitarian. So I think it's very possible that those broader social and cultural shifts around gender and bodies and reproduction are showing up in some of these statistics that you're seeing.
She says historically, the idea of reproduction has been focused on the female body, which meant contraception options were focused there too.
Men still have the exact same two options that they had 120 years ago at the end of the 19th century, condoms and vasectomy. In the late 19th century, as you get sort of
big established medical specialties for female reproductive bodies and almost nothing for men. That really does loop all the way through the 20th century. And so the birth control pill, gets developed for women and not for men. So there's ways to kind of trace the effects of this in actual medical infrastructure, including contraceptive development.
But the main driver behind Clement's decision wasn't related to his then girlfriend's birth control.
Even when I was a teenager, the thought of having kids was like just terrifying for me, and it wasn't really something I thought I wanted to do.
He's not alone in that. Canada recorded its lowest ever fertility rate for the second year in a row in 2023, according to Statistics Canada. 1/3 of adults aged 15 to 59 in 2022 said they didn't intend to have any children, according to the agency. The reasons, according to StatsCan research, are varied. Some cite the high cost of living, some say eco-anxiety. A US researcher, one of the very few studying the demographic of childless people, says this reason is more common than people think.
But most of the work that tries to understand why people are choosing not to have children points to that they simply don't want to have children.
The researcher says easier access to birth control has made not having children easier than ever.
As we see access to birth control and increasing reproductive freedom, not just in the United States and Canada, but really globally, it gives people the ability to choose to have children or the ability to choose not to have children. And that was a choice that wasn't available to them in the past. And as it becomes increasingly available, people are sort of leaning in that direction.
Clement says getting the vasectomy was right for him.
So I think it really just comes down to learning what you want from life and just fully living that way.
Hey, where's my buddy? At the end of the day, I'm glad I had kids.
Oh, there he is! Woo-hoo! Hey, buddy!
It's made my life more chaotic, but it's a beautiful kind of chaos. I wouldn't change a thing.
1, 2, 3. Whoa!
Everybody deserves a life that brings them joy, regardless of what that joy is. Corey Funk, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And I noticed right at the end of that story, Corey had a Christmas tree up. We are getting closer and closer to that holiday. And those kiddos, I think they're going to be enjoying a very white Christmas outside.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly certain deal here.
Right? It's not going to change.
No. Although I will point out that Christmas is now on the 10-day outlooks.
Yeah, it's close.
It's getting real close, which means I can show you at least one model depiction of what could happen. Keep in mind, I'm going to show you some numbers. This is one forecast model, and things could change a lot between now and then. So don't take any of the numbers that you see here to the bank, per se. So we are looking at temperatures staying below seasonal for the rest of this week through the weekend. But look at what happens, at least according to this model, as we get into next week. We start to see that temperature jumping up. Christmas Eve, a high of -4, and jumping close to freezing even as we get into Christmas Day and Boxing Day. So we are looking at least according to this, a bit of warm up. Again, this is kind of far out, so we'll keep our eye on it, but just wanted to put that out there because we're starting to get a sense of that on the longer range outlooks now, for sure. So here's your dog walking forecast for Tuesday. This is Chelsea. Thank you, Margie, for sending this picture in. Chelsea might be a bit cool on the walk tomorrow morning, but certainly not as cold as we have seen. You can send your pictures to talkback@cbc.ca. So we're looking at temperatures around -11 tomorrow morning. A mainly cloudy start to the day tomorrow, really across the province. We're looking at some clearing starting. We'll get some clearing going as we get through the day. It might take a while. So by the afternoon, cloudy with sunny breaks at the least, maybe a mix of sun and clouds up to -10 in the afternoon. Then we're looking at clouds starting to build in again, ebbing and flowing as we get into the evening, into the overnight period. So overnight forecast looks like this, keeping the cloudy skies around for the most part, -15, -16 or so into the Westman region, a bit warmer into the Red River Valley, still under a little bit of that warmth from that area of low pressure, and a slim chance we could see a few more flurries through Peguis, Gimli, maybe even as far south as Winnipeg, a chance of a couple of snowflakes through the overnight period tonight. Temperatures around -10 into the morning hours or into the evening hours tonight for northwestern Ontario. -19, chance we could see a few flurries out of some of this cloud in northern Manitoba. The best chance of that along the Hudson Bay coast and along the border with Nunavut once again throughout the day tomorrow. Looking at your forecast for Tuesday, we'll start to see a little bit of clearing as we get through the day. So by lunchtime, -19s through the Pas, OCN into Flin Flon, -14s, -15s through Grand Rapids and Norway House, -18 in Thompson by the time we get to the afternoon hours. Starting cloudy tomorrow in the south, we start to get a bit of clearing going as we get through the lunch hour into the afternoon hours. So a mix of sun and clouds by the time we get to the afternoon, Brittany. Temperatures -13s in the west and closer to -10 into northwestern Ontario.
All right. Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, here's some remarkable video from California after a rare tornado touched down Saturday afternoon in Scotts Valley, just south of San Jose, overturning cars, snapping trees, and injuring several people. Strong rain and winds also downed trees in nearby San Francisco and prompted the first ever tornado warning to be issued for the city. Still ahead, Riley's back with the last check on your forecast. Stay with us. Thousands of Santas in Barcelona took part in what has become a holiday tradition, trading in the sleigh ride for a motorcycle parade. Spectators line the streets to watch riders rev their way through the city. But it doesn't go without controversy. Some argue it contributes to excessive noise pollution and traffic. Santa's reindeer hope to make it
Let's have a look at your 7-day forecast now, and we're looking at a mix of sun and clouds through the day tomorrow. Cloudier start to the day. We'll start to get some clearing going. Might take a bit to get going, but we'll get there through the afternoon hours, -10. We start to see more cloud building in on Wednesday once again, with some snow through the overnight hours. Wednesday into Thursday in Winnipeg, this is like 2 to 5 centimeters. Higher amounts into southwestern Manitoba and some locally higher numbers than that into parts of the southwest. -13 for Friday, a mix of sun and clouds. We clear out for Saturday, -14 degrees. Then we're looking at temperatures staying cool as we head into the weekend, -17 with a mix of sun and clouds for Sunday, and -8 with a mix of sun and clouds again for Monday. Well, when you think of spreading holiday cheer, the thought of the Grinch probably doesn't come near.
But at a mall in St. John's, this Grinch showed the kids they had nothing to fear. Have a look at our daily lift. He frolicked and jested and delighted those of all ages and surely made Mall Santa jealous, for he thought he was more famous. But the Grinch could enchant too. In fact, his heart had grown 3 sizes.
Jackson, how do you feel about seeing the Grinch?
Good.
Good? Do you like the Grinch or Santa Claus more?
Who do you like better? The Grinch.
Do you like the Grinch better? Do you think it's cool that he's like out kind of like interacting with people instead of like a paid thing?
That's, I mean, part of it, and it's unexpected. So, you know, not everybody's lining up to see him. It's just kind of luck of the draw, which, you know, helps too. But yeah, it's nice that with Santa Claus, it's kind of, you're just sitting there. But with the Grinch, he's scaring people and stuff. It's fun. It's different.
Mitchell Marsh is the man behind the mask. He raises money for charity and also volunteers his free time to bring the Grinch to public spaces and events.
I love it.
I know.
And I do love that some of the kids really enjoy it. They're not all scared by the Grinch.
Oh, no.
He has to have his time too.
Exactly. His time to shine amongst everything else happening in the holiday season.
Exactly. Well, if you're heading out for holiday parties, make sure you're safe out on those roads.
Yeah,
we'll
for
see
sure.
you tomorrow.
See ya.